Izuku decided to keep his return to the house a surprise. If only because he knew that he would get swarmed when he got home, and he really couldn't handle that. The greenette was currently in a wheelchair, being pushed by his mother, at the gates of the house. "We're here," Inko said into the gate's intercom, alerting the pussycats to their presence. "Understood, welcome home Izuku," Mandalay said, trying to sound as inviting as possible. The gates opened, and Inko wheeled her son through them. It was all going peacefully until they got to the front door, and found Kyoko waiting for them. The little girl had heard the gates open and wondered who could be entering their home and why. When she saw her father on the other side of the door, her body moved before her she could think. "Daddy!" Kyoko jumped at Izuku, landing on his lap, and wrapping her arms around his waist. "OPH!" Izuku felt the girl impact him and broke out into a coughing fit. "It's nice to see you too Kyoko." "Ugh, but Daddy's still not feeling too well." Kyoko didn't seem to hear this and continued to hug him, sobbing heavily into his shirt, wetting it with her own tears, until a black tendril picked her up and pulled her off him. "Okay, that's enough." Fu walked up to them, using Kyosei to keep Kyoko in the air and cover her mouth so she didn't alert the others. "Ack. Thank you, Fu," Izuku told his first son with a smile. Fu nodded, his face expressionless as always, but if you looked in his eyes you could see just a bit of joy at seeing Izuku again. "Glad to see you Dad." "You too Grandma." Inko gave him a warm smile. "Fu, I'm happy you've been doing well. And your quirk has changed." "No, this is Kyosei. He's another one of your grandkids," Fu said, pointing at the black tendril. "He's a baby that lives inside me and eats my organs. Say hi to Grandma Kyosei." Another tendril came out of Fu and waved at Inko. "Oh, hello dear." Inko had absolutely no idea how to take that, so she figured that she would just process that later. "We should get you upstairs before everyone else finds you here and swarms you," Fu said as more tendrils came out of him, grabbing Izuku from his chair, before the boy jumped from the first floor to the next, making the way to the top of the house. MMM. Meanwhile, Kyoko was still struggling in Kyosei's grasp. "We'll let you go later. Just wait till we get Dad into bed," Fu told her. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. After Izuku had gotten situated in his bed, the pussycats, as well as Inko, Nara, Ken, Otoko, and of course Fu and Kyoko, latter of whom was on Izuku's bed with him, hugging his side very tightly. "It's good to see you back Izuku." Nara gave him a polite bow and a kind smile. "Things haven't been the same without you. I'll say. Everyone's been freaking out and we've had to do a dozen more chores every day," Ken complained, getting an elbow to the side from his very irritated sister. "Ow, what was that for?" Izuku sighed and gave the two a very half-hearted smile. "Thank you all for your work in helping out after I collapsed. I'm very proud of you all for keeping a cool head and stepping up when you were needed. Actually, Fukunoko also helped out a lot," Fu pointed out. Izuku paused, and his eyes went wide. "Wait, Fuku, like, our Fuku? The one that almost never leaves her room?" "The very same," Nara answered. "We were shocked too. It was the first time some of us had seen her and she was going around helping out with chores and comforting Eri and Kei." Izuku was very torn about this information. On one hand, a surge of pride flooded his body. Shy little Fuku got over her fears, and for the sake of others she went outside and helped out with the chores when she was needed. That is such a huge step for her. But on the other hand, that must have been so stressful for her. He can't even imagine how scared she was, especially with all the Grimm around. And he was the one who put her in that position. Then again, maybe forcing her out of her comfort zone is what she needed? He'll have to see how this turns out later. Either way, he swallowed his guilt. He couldn't wallow, he had to keep going. "I'll have to give her a really special reward." Izuku put on a smile, before turning to the pussycats. "And thank you all for coming here so quickly. I'm sorry if I disturbed your work." "It's fine. We were actually on vacation anyway," Mandalay reassured him. Pixie Bob was about to say something but Ragdoll quickly went over and covered her mouth. "Yeah, it's really not a problem," Ragdoll said. "With that being said, we do need to get back soon. Do you mind if we leave Kota here? He was really worried about you," Mandalay requested, giving him a bow. "I'm sorry if that's too much Dash." No, it's fine." Izuku coughed into his fist. "I mean I already have so many kids, what's one more?" Mandalay giggled. "I see. I guess that's one way to look at it. Well, I suppose we'll be on our way. Pussycats, out." And with that the pussycats waved goodbye, as they filed out of the room, closing the door behind them, leaving Izuku with his family. Inko turned to Otoko, Ken, and Nara and smiled at them. By the way, I'm Izuku's mother, Inko. It's so nice to meet you all. Oh, it's nice to meet you, too ma'am. Nara did a stiff bow of politeness. You don't need to be so polite, dear. Inko walked over and patted her on the head. Sweet. I don't really do well with all the stiff formal stuff. I leave that to the stick in the mud. Ken smirked, pointing to his sister before he dodged an attempted punch to the arm from said sister. Nice try, dweeb. Otoko walked up to Inko, staying a good distance away but still close enough so she could see his sign language. Nice to meet you, Grandma. Inko gave him a bright smile and signed back. I'm very happy to meet you too, dear. It's been quite a while since I've used sign language, so please let me know if I say anything wrong. Otoko felt a twinge of relief at the fact that his grandmother could understand him, and signed back. No, it's perfect. Inko giggled with joy and signed back. Good, I'm relieved. Alright. Izuku sighed, taking a deep breath to prepare himself for what was next. It's time to tell the other kids I'm Dash. Thump. 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 A massive thumping could be heard outside, as suddenly a huge eyeball covered the window. Dad! You're back. You're okay. Kai shouted out in his massive voice. Oh, dear. Inko, and everyone else for that matter, realized what was about to happen. Izuku winced as he could already feel the dog pile and he was not ready. Protect Dad. Fu got into a fighting stance, Hyosei covering his body as tentacles sprouted out of his back. Ken and Nara gave each other a nod, before turning down to their Omnitrixes. In a flash of green and pink, Ken was replaced by 4 arms and Nara was replaced by Articuana. And Otoko just stood there. He wasn't gonna risk setting anyone on fire, so he'd just sit this one out. They heard the sounds of feet banging against the floor, getting closer and closer. They're coming. Ken stood ready in front of Izuku, his arms spread out ready to catch any overeager kids. Smash! Suddenly the door flew across the room, as Kiba kicked it off its hinges. The vampire girl ran in, followed by Eri, Kei, Sanson, Shiroku, Yami, Yonda, and Netsu, and when they saw Izuku they froze. Daddy! Kiba looked at her father, shocked for a moment before tears dripped down her face and she shouted, Daddy! This would be the war cry that caused all the kids to go running to try and jump on Izuku. Black Net. Fu unleashed Hyosei's tendrils, as the black inky appendages spread out, capturing Eri, Kei, Shiroku, Yami, and Yonda, but Netsu and Sanson were free as they moved closer to Izuku. Nara unleashed a freezing blast, covering both Sanson and Netsu. Sanson instantly turned into a solid, completely unable to move, and Netsu was enveloped in a block of ice from the neck down. Meanwhile, Kiba and Shiroku used their strength and quickly broke free of Hyosei's grasp, and went back to charging at Izuku, but they were caught midair in Ken's many arms. Hey, settle down. Ken told the 2 girls as they struggled in his grasp. Fortunately, Kiba was far from full power, so he was able to keep her trapped in his grip along with Shiroku. The trapped children whined and complained for a while, except Sanson who was frozen, until Fu sent out his tendrils to cover everyone's mouths. Everyone quiet down. Fu ordered Hyosei, making him sound much more intimidating. Dad is still not feeling great, so don't just rush at him. Be careful. Also Kiba, Shiroku, Netsu, you all must be very careful. Understood? They all stopped struggling, letting out some nods and yes until they were all eventually let go. Netsu turned up his quirk's power, quickly melting the ice around him, and drying his clothes, before moving to Sanson to thaw her out. Once that was done, all the kids gathered around Izuku, and gently climbed onto his bed, and hugged him, some of them crying onto his shirt, and Kiba unleashing a number of tears that was worthy of the Midoriya name. Sanson wrapped all around them, trapping them all in the massive group hug/dog pile. They're there. It's okay. I'm okay. Izuku wrapped his arms around as many of them as he could and patted their heads. Inko tearfully watched this reunion on the side, whipping her eyes with some tissues she kept in her purse. She quickly realized she wasn't the only one, as she heard some sobbing near the window, and remembered that Kai was still there, unable to join because of his massive size. Feeling bad for the boy, Inko went to the window, opened it up, and pet the boy to try and soothe him. This went on for a long, long time. XXXXXXXXXXX. Once the tearful reunion had ended, the kids lined up in front of Izuku's bed, because he had an announcement for them. Alright, so, do you guys remember that exercise at UA? Izuku asked the kids, receiving nods all around from everyone but Ken and Nara. Wait, what happened with UA? Nara asked, surprised by the sudden bringing up of the most famous hero school in the country. Oh right, you weren't here when that happened. Izuku realized. So, U.A basically does charity work with us, and invited me, and any of the kids who were interested in becoming heroes in the future, to help Class 1A in a combat exercise. Wait, you got to go to UA? Like, the UA the #1 hero school in the world? Nara asked in slight amazement and disbelief. And we missed it. Ken whined. Ugh, if only we got here sooner. It was really fun. The students were all real cool. Netsu told them. Awan nice. Sanson added. Well, I'm glad you think so. Izuku tensed a bit, as he looked at Kyoku. He wasn't sure exactly how they would take this, but he hoped it would go over well. Because I was talking with Nizu and Ochako. Who's Ochako? Ken asked. He knew Nizu, anyone who wanted to be a hero knew of the famous principal of UA, but he'd never heard of anyone named Ochako. Ochako Uraraka is a hero student at UA, she's Dad's best friend, Fu answered. And future girlfriend. Shiroku added. No, she's not. Izuku's face turned red, and he broke into another coughing fit, as his mother giggled in the corner. Anyway, as I was saying, we were talking and we've come to the conclusion that since I can't work in my currency state, Ochako and the rest of Class 1A will come here and act as temporary workers until I'm well enough to hire permanent workers. And I will be actually hiring people this time. I promise. The general reaction to this was positive. Most of the kids were excited to hear that someone would be helping Izuku out and voiced these thoughts very loudly. Of course, the big exception to this was Kyoku, who looked very displeased about this, but thankfully didn't object or voice her displeasure. But there was one reaction that was just off. Kiba. She just didn't seem to react much. She looked a bit happy at the news, but she seemed distracted by something. In fact, Kiba in general had been off this entire time. First off, she looked so much more unkempt since the last time he saw her. Messy hair, wrinkled, well-worn clothes, and she wasn't putting up the Queen of Eternal Darkness act she usually put up. And as was stated earlier, she just seemed distracted. After her burst of emotion from earlier, she just kept looking at his office? For some reason. Izuku didn't know what was up with that, but now that he was looking at his office door, he noticed something else. Kota. He was ashamed to admit that with all the chaos that had just gone on, he didn't notice that Kota was missing. But here he was, peeking from the other side of the door frame, glaring at him. He seemed mad about something and Izuku could probably guess what he was mad about. However, he would have to deal with all these things on their own, later. Alright, everyone, I need you all to make sure you're on your best behavior. They'll be here for a few weeks, so don't be afraid to get to know them, Izuku instructed. Remember, these are Ochiko's friends, so they're to be trusted. Then, Fu raised his hand. Yes, Fu? Izuku wondered what his question could be. If all of 1A is coming here, does that mean Bakugo will also be coming? Fu asked. Izuku should have seen that coming. Suddenly the mood drastically shifted. The more Gentile children looked worried, and even slightly fearful of the notion that the person who made Izuku's life hell would be coming here and staying over here for weeks. And the more aggressive ones looked absolutely pissed. As if they were planning in their heads to ambush the blonde, the moment he stepped onto their property. That even seemingly brought Kiba back to reality, if the look of pure fury was anything to go by. Who's Bakugo, and did just saying his name made the room 100% more murderous? Ken asked awkwardly, as he and his sister had no clue who Bakugo was. Kiba and Kyoku opened their mouths to no doubt slander Bakugo to the fullest, but thankfully Fu wrapped Kyosei's tendrils around both their mouths. Bakugo Katsuki is a bully who physically and mentally tormented Dad, along with pretty much all the other people at the schools Dad attended, Fu explained as objectively as possible. He's just a really unpleasant person, who pretty much everyone here hates. Wait, he was a bully, and he got into the hero course? Nara was taken aback, and slightly outraged at this knowledge. How? That's a very long story, that I can tell you later. Izuku sighed, feeling a headache coming on. But to answer your question, no, Bakugo will not be coming. This elected relief, happiness, and for some reason slight disappointment among the kids. Izuku could only imagine that the reason for that last one is because some of them were really looking forward to beating up Bakugo. Good. If he tried to do anything to Dad again, then we'd just have Kai sit on him again. Kay giggled, electing some laughs out of her siblings. That's right. I won't let anyone hurt Dad, Kai said confidently from outside. Izuku smiled slightly and shook his head. You guys, alright. You guys should go and clean your rooms. We wouldn't want our guests to come in and see you all have messy rooms, would we? No, cried out most of the kids, as they all left to do as Izuku told them, leaving Izuku with just his mother. Inko looked at her son and smiled. It seems things have gotten so much more lively. Yeah, Izuku smiled, then suddenly, a card fell out of seemingly nowhere onto his bed. And it just never seems to stop. Izuku picked up the card. It was handmade. A blank sheet of paper that had been folded in two, with the words, "Glad you're back." The handwriting was too good to be anyone's but Fuku's, and given where it came from he can only assume Mu had something to do with this as well. He opened it up, and inside it read as such. Hi. It's Fuku. Everyone got really sad after you overworked yourself, so please don't do it again. I'll help out more if I need to. I don't want to see Eri and Kei sad again. So don't be afraid to rely on Fuku, but if I mess up, please don't be too mad. And then written below that in much less impressive handwriting was yeah, what she said. And at the bottom, it said signed, Fuku and Mu. Izuku frowned and sighed. I really caused everyone so much trouble. You made a mistake, honey. Inko reminded him gently, going over and caressing his head. It's time to fix it. Yeah, Izuku said. Time to fix it.